The history of Brazil is a history of violence. Worries about getting robbed or murdered have become real concerns for millions of Brazilians. After all, over 500,000 people were murdered in Brazil in the last 10 years. And it's not because Brazil is a gigantic country with 207 million people. Our murder rate is 30 times that of Europe's. There have been more killings in Brazil since 2008 than in 92 countries combined. That means, by the time you finish listening to this podcast, 2 more people will have been murdered in Brazil. But how do we solve this endemic problem? That will be one of the main challenges of Brazil's next president. My name is Gustavo Ribeiro, and this is Explaining Brazil. With me today is Felippe Angeli, Advocacy Coordinator of Sou da Paz Institute, an NGO that tries to propose public policies to curb violence rates in Brazil. Hello, Felippe.
Hello, Gustavo. How are you doing?
Brazil recorded over 62,000 murders last year. Criminality has cost us over 285 billion reais. Criminal organizations seem to be untouchable to the state. The PCC, or the First Command of the Capital, São Paulo's main drug gang, has estimated 20,000 members. Instituto Sou da Paz has come up with a plan to reverse the situation. But before we address what to do, I want to ask you, how did things get so bad?
Yeah, things got really bad. That's for sure, for beginning. Like in crisis, that the one we live in Brazil, we like related to public safety in Brazil. You never have just one main cause. You have like several different situations, several different causes that during long periods of time they were like put together to in some way have as consequence the situation, the crisis that we're experiencing right now. We always say that violence is like a complex phenomenon. You need to have like several different conditions, situations put all together in order that this situation, this violence, this criminality can have the results that we can see like in the last years. You have the social inequality in Brazil, which is huge. It's a poor country, but with lots of rich neighborhoods, rich cities, and this huge social inequality is part of an explanation. Brazil has as well a huge drug and gun market, which also like plays a role in the way that violence develops itself in Brazil. You have the penitentiary system, prison system that nowadays is more a cause to the problems than a solution to the problems. All the gangs, all the like the criminal gangs, the organized crime gangs that like you just mentioned, PCC, but other gangs that like CV or Terceiro Comando or Família do Norte. There are like several gangs, organized crime gangs in Brazil, and they're all born in the prison system and have like a very important problem regarding the police forces, like the way they're organized in Brazil related to the law system we have here in Brazil. We have 2 main police forces. One is military, responsible for patrolling, for like police in the streets. You have other investigatory police, which we call civil police, and they struggle to work together, and this poses lots of problems in terms of the efficiency of the service that police offers to society. So all this put together, this is the consequence that we are facing right now.
And General Heleno, which is one of the main advisors to Jair Bolsonaro, the front-runner in the presidential election, has recently said that Brazil risks becoming a narco state. I wrote recently on the Brazilian Report an article interviewing an expert from the Brazilian Public Safety Forum who says that no, that's not a risk. Brazilian elites are not so engaged in drug trafficking as you had in other states like Bolivia in the 80s, which was briefly a narco state. Do you think that there's an actual risk of Brazil becoming a narco state, like General Heleno said?
It's really complex because, first of all, I think one thing that's very important to stress is that the presence of a drug market doesn't make violence to spread. you have drugs everywhere. You have drugs in France, you have drugs in Germany, you have drugs in Sweden. It's illegal there to use drugs and to sell drugs, and they don't have like the level of violence that we have here. Even the United States, which is the biggest consumer, the society which is the biggest consumer of drugs in the world, they have lots of violence, drug violence related issues, but not as close as we have here. But you have lots of drug markets, even if they are illegal, they develop itself in a way which the violence or the spread of violence is not the main strategy they put together to organize their markets.
So if we check the states where murder rates have jumped over the past few years, there is a coincidence with the drug routes. So Acre, where the drugs coming through Bolivia, for instance, and then Ceará, when they are shipped to Europe. Mm-hmm. So is the violence more related to gangs fighting for turf?
There are lots of theories. Like you have a theory which is related to the increase of life quality and the economy boom that we had in these cities, because you had like more consume. You have the social inequality growing up as well. So like people has more like more things to get robbed, for instance, like people, mm-hmm. they bought televisions, they bought like motorcycles, and this they like boosts a little bit social inequality, and this this consumption is spread. It can be one of the reasons behind the increase of criminality. This is one hand. For sure, the disputes between different crime gangs related to drug market, if you have lots of, if you have a huge gun market related as well to this drug market, it can be as well, one of the reasons behind this increasing criminality. But there's more than it. Like, for instance, you have this huge flaws related to the way police work here in Brazil. So when like the crime arrives in these small areas or are areas in the countryside, which they were not used to have these rates of crimes in the past, you have police forces that are not prepared to face up this challenge.
You talked about the way police forces are structured in Brazil, and then that leads me to Sou da Paz Institute's plan to curb violence rates. There are 6 priorities, among which is restructuring the law enforcement agencies in Brazil. Can you talk a little bit more about the plan and how it is doable to it will not be easy, it will not be overnight, but it is doable to have a sustainable plan to change our violence rates in Brazil?
It's a main concern in Sou da Paz because, like with the size of the crisis we have here in Brazil, it's very easy to complain, like it's very easy to point fingers and say like you were wrong, you screwed up here, you were wrong there.
Especially in our federal system where part of the responsibility goes to the federal government, part to the state government, part to the city. So everyone is comfortable saying, well,
it's not my problem. It's like a state issue, it's a federal issue, it's a municipal issue. Definitely. I think in general life, it's much more easy to say that someone is wrong and just be critical about this than to say, okay, this is a problem, let's work together. That's our duty, like we are representatives of the civil society, like the organizations of civil society. It's our duty to point fingers and be critical when we should be, but it's our duty as well, like to propose and to sit down with governments in any ideology or parties they may represent, and to think together, like how can we get out of this, huge trap that we got put inside.
So how can we?
That's not easy question. So we are doing this for several years already. We developed this agenda in 2014, which was the last election we have in the for president. We worked in an agenda as well for like the cities mayor's election. We had like 2 years before. Something very important to Sou da Paz and something that you mentioned, like the disputes between the different levels of the federal government. It's important for us that everybody, including the population, including the society, everybody is responsible for getting things better in public security. So in this agenda here, that we actually developed two documents. One is just Sou da Paz that developed it itself, related to São Paulo government election. We are based here. We were created here in São Paulo 20 years ago. So we have this very, very close relation to to the state and to the government in the state. We work together with the government for a long time already. And São Paulo has a very specific situation in Brazil because São Paulo showed already lots of improvements related to public security in general. We have nowadays the lowest, but by far the lowest murder rates in Brazil. So São Paulo has lots of advancements already, and we need to go further. But related to Brazil, to the federal level, we work together with two other organizations from civil society. One is Fórum Brasileiro de Segurança Pública, it's like Brazilian Forum of Public Safety, you mentioned already.
A sort of think tank to think public policy.
And they put together like police officers, professors of universities, researchers. It's like a pool of different, especially it's related to public safety in order to, like a think tank, as you said. And we worked with Instituto Igarapé, which is a good partner of us in Rio. They are specialized as well in public safety. And together we developed this agenda, which is called Public Safety is the solution, which dialogues a little bit with some proposals that got very common in this election, that like you make your safety by your own, like buy a gun and be the hero. We try to stress like safety, like fighting and beating crime should be a public endeavor. You only will win this situation if you have this public spirit, and you never can beat the situation if you work in an individualist point of view, like just spreading guns and thinking that people will act like heroes on Hollywood movies or something like this.
Which is the agenda of one of our main presidential candidates. It's to put guns on the hands of people.
Which we are like totally against. And once again, not because of an ideology or because of a partisan preference, but because you have like a world academic and research consensus that more guns is equal to more crimes. You have other factors that influence this as well. It's like, as I said, it's like saying that if you smoke cigarettes, you never develop cancer, or smoking cigarettes is good for your health. We have nowadays related to guns the same consensus that we have today related to cigarettes. Like you can smoke cigarettes for 20 cigarettes per day for 10 years. Maybe you're gonna develop cancer. Maybe you're not gonna develop cancer. There are other factors that influence this, but for sure, if you develop cancer, it's going to be linked to the fact that you smoked these 20 cigarettes, for that period of time. It's a pity that you have these, frauds that is maybe even it's so sad, like specialists that try, to promote this industry agenda, because in the end, it's totally related to a big market, which is the gun market, which is very important and like moves lots of money in the whole world.
So your plan brings forward 6 main priorities. One is reorganizing law enforcement agencies, fighting organized crime, fighting impunity, taking back control in the penitentiary system, trying to prevent crime instead of just fighting crime, go after the money when we are fighting drug organizations, and not only trade bullets with drug traffickers, but go where it hurts, in their bank accounts, and then regulate gun ownership. So that is on broad strokes, your agenda. How do we implement that? Who has to do that? It's something that Congress with the president must put forward. It's something that states can do parts of it on their own.
It's a big challenge, that's for sure. And the idea behind it is like it's a long-term, endeavor. We need to start right now because people are dying, and we need to work together. Like in different federation levels, the Congress, the president, the police forces, the civil society. Like the press. Everybody needs to work together. Like as you said, the agenda was organized behind like 2 priorities, which is one is related to like the huge amount of people that get killed every year in Brazil. So one of the priorities for sure is to curb and to prevent violent crime, especially murder, especially homicides. The other is to weaken like the structures of organized crime. They are very linked. Those 2 priorities are very linked. And those two priorities, they are organized to be implemented through 7 solutions, macro solutions, we said. And these macro solutions, they got divided behind 35 different, very specific proposals. So what we try to do here, first of all, it's not ideological. They are all science-based, research-based. It's technical evidence. We don't want to, it's not partisan.
And like you said, Sou da Paz is willing to work with whatever government wants to work with the institute, right?
Yeah, right. Since they respect democracy and institutions, definitely, because otherwise you need to, work in a different way. But yeah.
That should go without saying, but in Brazil today...
not since that obvious. Nothing that's obvious in Brazil, unfortunately. But no, we hope that the institutions of democracy are well preserved in Brazil. But yeah, definitely, any government that win the electoral process and starts working in the 1st of January next year, since they respect democracy and the institutions and human rights, we're going to be seated together with all the honor to try to solve this problem, which is a national problem. It's not just a problem of rich people or of poor people, of black people, of white people. For sure, there are clusters in the population that suffers this problem, much more cruel, dimension than others, like poor young black guys in in the skirts of the city. They have this murder rate which is far bigger than people in the city centers, white people, rich people. But it's it's public safety. It's a public matter, for definition.
And where should we start? So let's say that there's a new government in town and they want to implement this agenda. Where should we start from?
As we said, first of all, we need to establish priorities. And for us, human life is the priority number one. If you have more than 63,000 homicides in 1 year, you need to start by there. These people dying. It costs a lot of money to the country, as you mentioned, because it's generally young people that will never more produce work, pay taxes, and besides of that, for sure, you cannot just put price in human lives, that all the sadness and the suffering related to those deaths. So this is priority number one. And those macro solutions I mentioned is first of all, it's management. You need to improve management in the institutions related to public safety, be data-driven, be look for efficiency, organize the structure in a way that what you have in the end can be audited, can be evaluated, can be done again, can be reproduced everywhere, and to organize the structures, organize police force, working in governance, working in management. The other thing is for sure very important, one of your first questions about being a narco state. It's difficult to really define what is really a narco state, even organized crime. There are tricky concepts, what is the level of intrusion of these gangs in the official systems, in the politics system, should be considered as organized or a narco state or something. It's very difficult to define this, but for sure it's a big and it's a huge challenge we have. We cannot have all those drug gangs or organized crime gangs that has control of almost every prison in Brazil. This is impossible to get along with it.
And for instance, the fact that a lot of criminal organizations are controlling penitentiaries in Brazil, we have seen the results of that in January 1st, 2017 and 2018, when there were a lot of prison riots, almost 200 inmates were killed. It forced Brazil to face how inhumane these prisons are. But in Brazil, it's still taboo to say we need to improve the quality of life in prisons. We need to give those guys a way out of criminality. Because people are saying, well, we are law-abiding citizens and things are horrible for us. Why should we make it any easier for prisoners? How do we change that culture in Brazil?
First of all, we need to see things through as well a lens of efficiency. Okay, in the last 20 years, we increased the prison rates more than 300%. And what's the results of this in the street safety? It's known. It's the opposite. Like with this imprisonment rate, you just got more organized gangs, and this is totally related to the management aspect and dimension that I just mentioned. We need to see. Okay, we're trying to do this and these policies. We are trying to develop this and this strategy. Where are those strategies leaving us? Getting us to. In the case of prisons, we have this huge imprisonment increase, but the results are awful, and there's a very, very, very tricky situation related to this as well. It's imbalance, of the punishment system, because what we have here today nowadays in prisons, like in most parts of the prison, in the most prisons you have across Brazil, petty criminals, that we are behind bars, like small drug dealers, robbers, or people that they committed small and not like without violence, patrimonial like crimes. So, and like for instance, people that like the murders, they account just for 11% of the prison population. So that's the problem. You have this imbalance. Almost 50% of the criminals behind bars now today in Brazil, they are petty criminals, and the really bad guys, like rapists, murderers, they are in the streets. So that's why, again, you need to work on management. You need to restructure police forces and the judicial system in order to prioritize, to go really against the bad guys, and those young people who are just committed like petty crimes. They need to get out, get other opportunities, to get back on their shoes, on their lives, and not be like praise for those big drug gangs.
And is there, because the military police you mentioned, it's a state force. So each state has its own system, more or less. Do we have one state that is doing some things right that could be benchmarked to other states, or even to the way federal government deals with it?
Yeah, as you said, it's a big challenge because Brazil is huge. It's like a continent. Very diverse country, very unequal country, like states in the northeast, states in the north, states in the south. They are completely different, even in terms of, like budgetary capacity. Yeah, benchmarks, kind of difficult. Like you have like huge challenges everywhere. But like here in São Paulo, for instance, there were lots of improvements that were made. We are far away from a perfect situation. We still have like huge challenge to address and to come over with. But the fact is, there were some advancements. You need investment. You need to put money on this. You need leadership. You need political leadership. You need a president or a governor or a mayor that say, okay, this is my problem. I'm going to lead this. It's not an affair. For sure, you need to have a good team, the support of civil society, the president, everybody. But you need to have political leadership for this. It's not something that you just give this to a consultant and say, okay, deal this with by yourself. This is very important too. It should be a priority.
We are undergoing a presidential election. We have 2 candidacies. The second round vote is going to be in 12 days. Have you seen a campaign addressing this issue as it should?
No, definitely not. We are seeing one of the most challenging times in Brazil, for sure. I think this is something that's happening more or less in other parts of the world, like this rise of the extreme right, the role of, like social networks, related to democracy, and the way like fake news spread everywhere, and what's the impact on democracies, on modern and Western democracies. I think it's part of a global trend, and we are seeing this happening now in Brazil. It's kind of scary, but the point is like the election, this specific election. It's not about proposals. It's not about like real issues. It's about ideologies, if someone is a communist or not, if someone is a fascist or not, or if there's a gay dictatorship like getting over. It's totally nonsense in the end, and that's a pity because people are really dying. It's like the crimes are not fake. The crimes are real instead of the fake news. And I would like the organization I represent. Actually, it should be as a responsibility for the candidates, to discuss real issues of the society, and we have lots of real issues.
Yeah, we will see a second round vote without actually knowing for sure what the proposals are, which, like you said, it's kind of scary. Felippe, thank you very much for joining us. I hope to have you back in another opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. It will be my pleasure.
If you like this podcast, please take a look at our website. It's Brazilian.report. Every day we have new content about Brazil's politics, economics, and society. We also have exclusive newsletter services if you want to be briefed on what's going on in Brazil before starting your day. Subscribe now to our free trial and enjoy all of our content for 14 days. And it's really for free. You don't have to put any credit card information. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter. Our handle is @Brazilian Report. Thank you very much. That's all for this week.